Hi, Lyn Christian from Soul Salt Inc. I'm a certified master coach. I'm also a multiple brain integration coach, and I've been certified in conversational intelligence. I have a background in executive coaching, life coaching, and time and focus management. I'm also a former project manager. And what I'm bringing toward you today is the topic of dealing with bullying. Bullying happens because of many reasons. One, some people don't know they're bullying. Some people are just extremely insecure and they don't realize that they're offloading that insecurity in a way that comes across as bullying to others. Today, we're going to talk to two individuals who live here in the Salt Lake Valley with me, who are taking on this topic, who have really helped the community. In our little valley here in Salt Lake City, we have one high school that's even been noticed by the Wall Street Journal because of a terrible statistic. And that statistic is by the time we reached our 7th suicide in just one single high school, people started to wake up. This group, the Golden Gate Club, that formed to help students, has reached into the Harriman High School where this 7th suicide occurred and is helping them try to deal with changing the culture that is taking lives of our children. Today, I turn to them to see what they can teach us as coaches, as therapists, as trainers, and as human beings. What can they teach us and what can carry over into the corporate world and into our families? I hope you enjoy this interview. So I am so thrilled to have the guests joining me today who are joining me. The topic we're covering today is bullying. Bullying in the workplace, bullying in public schools, and with me today is Michael Hughes and Jolynne Ward. Now, Michael, you actually have an interesting background with a BS in zoology, a master's in education administration. You've been a high school and a middle school administrator. Mama Jo, or Jolynne, you have been a hall monitor called a hall mom. You are a stay-at-home mom and wife who has an amazing husband, and you have 5 children. So you know about this field of sending your children out into a world that bullies people, and you've kind of become the Mama Jo for thousands of people. I'm calling you together because you're part of the Golden Gate Club. And so would you guys tell us a little bit about the Golden Gate Club and how you got introduced to it?
We actually founded it. Joe witnessed a cheerleader at our school, which was Bingham High School, who was very altruistic. And a mother called her, was isolated and socially kind of a pariah. And she would go home and sleep until dinner time. She'd get up after dinner for dinner, and then she'd go back to bed. She was obviously, according to the mother, suicidal and very extremely depressed. So I asked if we could pair her up with some other kids, and she said, please do. So I had a little cheerleader that came to my office quite often. Her name was Savannah Vigil, and she would want to help other kids and do what she could to make a difference. Just a real altruistic young lady. So I paired them up. I asked the young lady in question, whose mother called me. I said, I didn't want to make her feel like a project, so I said, would you help this cheerleader to collect blankets for the homeless? The cheerleader, by the way, was legally blind, and so she needed help for doing a lot of things. And so she agreed, and then Joe set them up together. And a few months later, the mother wrote an email saying, my daughter now laughs like a teenage girl. She looks forward to going to school. Savannah has literally saved her life. And Joe said, let's form a crew or a club. And so we came up with Golden Gate Club after the story of a young man who jumped off the bridge in the 70s, ending his life and leaving a note that said, if anyone smiles at me on the way to the bridge, I won't jump. And so from there, it's kind of steamrolled into, I think we're in like 20 schools now. And
well, and starting as a hall mom or a hall monitor, I actually had an administrator reach out to me and ask if I would consider the position. My husband and I own a successful printing company, and it was something that I went in and viewed as a stewardship. just to see where I could possibly help or make a difference. And the first thing I noticed were the social dynamics in the school.
Right.
And I noticed kids hiding out in the corners. I was pulling them out of the bathrooms, out of their cars.
Wow.
I saw kids isolating themselves just in so many different ways. I saw new students coming to the school who didn't know how to connect because they lacked those skills to be able to just put themselves out there and reach out and maybe make a friend. And our experience as we formed this club and we started to hear more students' stories,
right,
we realized all the many ways that students were isolating themselves and what would lead to isolation. And it was kind of interesting. After the club had been organized for about 7 months, and granted, we started with 7 recruited members in a special needs teachers classroom. The following club rush, when we had our pledge posted in the hall, that club rush, we had 227 students join.
Wow.
That connected with the pledge. And they would look at that and realize, you know, that's something I connect with, someone who I want to be. But kids just need a reason to reach out. They need a pass. And there weren't any programs in the school that helped kids connect to school and peers, because everybody needs to connect in some way. But a lot of kids don't know how to connect because they lack those skills to connect. And, you know, something that was really special that we knew that we had gotten the name right, Golden Gate Club, there was a picture that hung outside of Mr. Hughes's office that neither he nor I noticed for 7 months. And I happened to be in his office one day, and he looked past me and he said, "Joe, look at that picture on the wall outside my office." And it was of a young man looking at the Golden Gate Bridge.
No way.
Yes. And I said, you know what? Someone painted the future. It took me a year to get a hold of the student who painted that picture. And when I finally did, her story was incredible. She had moved here from California. She, her first day into Bingham, it was a January morning. She had ice on her shoe. She walks in, she slips, she falls. Her art supplies go everywhere. Not one person stopped to help her pick up her art supplies. And she let that set the tone for the rest of her high school. She was a junior. She isolated herself. She didn't see value in herself. Art was all she had. That was what she connected to. And she didn't know how to, she didn't have anybody to reach out to her, nor did she know how to reach out herself.
Wow.
So she spent all of her days in the art room. And when the art project came around, she said the Golden Gate Bridge came to her as a symbol of better days ahead. And that is why she chose to paint that. Well, we, in doing a little more research, understand that the Golden Gate Bridge is a symbol of connection because it was built to connect a community. And the engineer who actually built the bridge was devastated when he learned it was becoming a suicide destination. And the fact that someone only needed a smile on the way to the bridge told us that we needed to look at a different approach, possibly to suicide, to bullying. And that is when we organized a pro-social approach to students. And pro-social defined is outreach, inclusion, positivity, helpfulness, kindness. Our motto is stay kind. And when students join the club, and because it grew so fast and other schools reached out for it, I had to organize, we put together the nonprofit organization Golden Gate Movement. So in elementary schools, we are Golden Gate Kids. In middle schools, we're Golden Gate Initiative because they don't have clubs. Right. And then in high school, we are Golden Gate Club. And so just to give you a little background, we formed a board. Our board is made up of educators, a lawmaker, she was the current school board president for 6 years, and she's now in the House of Representatives. We have educators from college to elementary, building a soft skill program that will be research-based, because there's the superintendent of Jordan School District has opened up the doors for us to go in and do research asking students what the top 10 challenges are that they face. And so based on that evidence, and we've put together one manual, we have one unit so far that teachers are bringing in supplementally and that are in alignment with the Utah core curriculum, health curriculum. And so next year's materials that we are now starting to develop will be based on student concerns and what they're dealing with.
Wow.
And but I did have a student come up to me this year. He's a sophomore, because he has a support group. He has instant, genuine friends who are who have taken the pledge, who want to be that person, and that's our hashtag, I will be that person. He came in as a complete loner, having been bullied his entire life. And he told me this year, Mama Jo, this is the first year in my life I haven't been bullied.
Two things that are of interest is the picture that was hanging on my wall. The young man looking at the bridge looked exactly like her son, which it was another little interesting point. And what we point out that although the result of the Golden Gate program is a reduction in bullying, and we can actually quantify that, and seemingly a reduction in suicide, we're not by nature, we're not defined as an anti-bullying or anti-suicide group any more than a donut is a pro weight gain program. It's just the net result. And we stay away from the anti, because you give a kid a bean and tell him not to put it in his ear, and you turn your back, where's it going?
Yeah, it's going to go in his ears. So you're
exactly.
You're leading with the future. You're leading with the pro-social, the social insulation, the soft skill curriculum. So I want to pause here, because you sold me, and you've sold me so many times when I've listened to Shannon, who's part of your organization that works for us here at Soul Salt. I want to paint a picture for our audience, because you guys are cracking the nut on how to deal with a socially safe, pro-social approach. I think you've given a lot of street cred in what you've said already, and I can tell the cybernetic loop of the energy is around it with just this story of the picture and how you came up with the name. What I'm super, super interested in is what our audience won't know that you know and I know, and that is you two are tackling this initiative in a hotbed of suicide. Mm-hmm. So would you just give the audience an appreciation for how harsh the environment is here in the Salt Lake Valley of Utah for your constituents, for your students, and for our family of community here? Can you share that a little bit?
Absolutely. One of the things we were realizing as we do what we do, we found research that shows that most bullies don't know they're bullies. In fact, I had some introspection and looked at my own behavior in the past. And I was never the guy that threw the kid up against the locker and said, give me your lunch money. But I had a sharp wit, and I would make fun of people. And I thought I was just being funny. What I realized lately is that when everyone laughs, it's a joke. But when there's a victim, it's bullying. And that is a harsh realization at my age, to look back and think, you know, I always thought I was a good guy, but I look back now and realize that there were times when I was a bully. And so, and I think most people, I've had students in my office who have complained about another kid being a bully. So I pull them both in and do what I call a conflict resolution. And the bully, the alleged bully, would often end up in tears because they didn't realize that they were bullying this other kid. They thought they were just playing or connecting or doing whatever they could to act their age.
Well, and that is kind of the curriculum comes in, is because a lot of people don't know how to communicate, and their way of communicating is just boils down to self-acceptance and being able to be accepted, and however they're accepted is how they're going to communicate, even though they may not realize it's wrong.
Right.
And that's something that I think so many kids that have come in, because we have an elementary school that's piloting our program this year, and the principal has already said this has changed the entire culture of the school. I had the principal at Bingham High School last year say Jolynne has changed the entire climate and culture of the school.
In the Salt Lake Valley, there's a large religious community, got interested in this, I looked up, I Googled bullying and changed to this religious community, but throughout religious communities all over the world, there are problems with people who bully each other. That's also true in the corporate world. It's also true in the social world. It's also true in any um, any circle you look at. There's people who want to dominate or connect or do whatever they do by being overbearing or browbeating or other methods that they
Right.
use.
Great. So how bad is it here in the Salt Lake Valley? Like I believe the hotbed in some of the schools that you go to, the suicide rate is skyrocketed and probably pushing the top of the national norms. Is that right?
Well, I think the world turned to Harriman High School because they had 7 suicides last year. There was another student who had actually laid out his suicide plan, and the parent approached the school board member, which at the time, Golden Gate was fairly new. And the school board member said, you need to have your son take a look at Golden Gate and see what, if that's something that he can connect to. And they came in, heard about our purpose, and the son got very actively involved in wanting to bring Golden Gate. They loved what it stood for. They loved how it helped students connect socially, emotionally, and another thing that we do is we try to find things and bring in workshops that help kids connect in a variety of ways. And I know you talk about kind of the gay community. Our sophomore leader this year has gay parents, and the one thing that I love about Golden Gate is anybody that comes in, they're a part of a community. They're a part of where we accept each other, and we exude and portray pro-social behaviors, which is acceptance. It's inclusion, no matter what the person is. And so we have basketball players to cheerleaders to homeless to skaters. It kind of dissolves that clique and that perception of what another person is or is not in that person's eyes. And I love to see these kids coming together and to see those social separations dissolve.
We have gay, straight, we have popular, we have unpopular, we have religious, we have atheists, and they all find commonality in the fact that they want to all be kind to each other and others.
And that's really what it's all about. But going back to this student who brought it into Harriman, where the world, in fact, Wall Street Journal just did an article about this student and the Golden Gate Club. And, him bringing it into this school, they had 503 students join, which
Wow.
tells you that there is a need for this type of a program and approach.
There is. And so I want to segue to that because I think you're finding common strands in your work that would be helpful for the coaching community that I represent and the business community that I represent. So I would just want to ask some very simple questions and have you guys candidly respond to these. How does one, and how would you suggest leaders in business or coaches stand up against something like a bullying scenario or a bullying culture when they're in a leadership position to be able to turn it to a pro-social scenario? Do you have ideas on that?
Absolutely. One of the things that we're finding in the schools that Golden Gate is in is that it is increasing morale. Joe just had a meeting with Corporate Alliance and also the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield, who utilized some of our program. I'll let you, Joe, tell the story.
Well, first of all, we did a presentation for Corporate Alliance, which included 140 executives throughout Utah and actually beyond. After our presentation, I actually had a long line of business people that wanted more information about this program. The first 5 things that an actual executive looks for when they're hiring somebody are soft skill related before they actually get to their qualified skill or hard skill.
What are they?
And, pardon me?
Eye contact, a firm handshake, arriving on time, being neatly dressed.
Body language, ability to make eye contact, smile, to be able to communicate, to be able to really connect to the person that you're interviewing with. And, just that first impression, and that's why the first, one of the articles of our pledge, and in elementary, where the kids will be learning at elementary, we talk about how a smile is a bridge to everything. Eye contact, that body language. It's those simple, fundamental soft skills that kids, well, and I believe technology's taking a lot of that away, because kids turn to their phones because they find a community there, but they're losing the ability to connect, make interpersonally.
We also teach students how to strike up a conversation. It's amazing how many people don't know how to walk up to someone and say, I really like that ring you have, or I really like your shirt, or whatever like that. And, and just talk about something that you like in common. And,
yeah. But going into the corporate alliance and going into the corporate world and putting this presentation together, the CEO of Blue Cross Blue Shield reached out to me at Christmas time, and he had access to our presentation materials on our website because he wanted to bring it in and show his staff. He wanted to supply them with a Stay Kind shirt, which is our motto, and he wanted a corporate pledge for his office that each of the employees could hang in their cubicle. And he said when he did the presentation with his staff, he said there wasn't a dry eye in the room, because everybody connected to the pledge and those articles. And it is universal. It doesn't, these pledge articles apply to students as well as adults, and whether we just take out the word student and put in the word colleague, it applies. And that's where people connect of all ages, is to the pledge. And our goal is to continue developing materials that go under each item of the pledge that teach those soft skills.
To answer your initial question, what can executives do in order to create this culture of acceptance? And that's number one, to raise awareness. The heavy hand is not going to, there's a joke that says the beatings will continue until morale improves.
Right.
And that obviously doesn't work. And so what they have to do is they have to lead by example. They have to raise awareness, and raising awareness is a huge factor, because again, most people don't know how they're perceived, and they don't know that they're bullies. And so without awareness, and also addressing it proactively, and creating activities and strategies where they can address this in a way that shows people how to do something without being heavy-handed.
I love that. It's very much in line with coaching. We have Sir John Whitmore, who was the father of business coaching in Great Britain, said, our job as coaches is to raise awareness. And then once awareness has been raised, ask, what will you do with this new awareness? So I think we're on a similar vein here. Why don't we spend just a few minutes, maybe a couple minutes on each of these areas of the pledge? This was what I was drawn to when I went to your website. Is that okay if we go to that? Because I feel
absolutely
a lot of meat. So the pledge number one item is, I will be a true friend. Take a couple of minutes and speak to that.
A true friend is someone who will tell you what you're doing wrong as well as what you're doing right. If you're dating the wrong person, if you're doing something that's destructive, a true friend will step in, risk your anger, maybe even risk your friendship to help you not make a mistake. True friends are precious and rare.
Wow, that's a huge summary. But Mama Jo, did you want to say something to that?
Well, and true friends accept you, and they want to help you, and they, that's the one thing that we've been trying to help students see, is that really what a true friend is someone who won't go behind your back and gossip, and they won't spread rumors, and which are, articles that are in the pledge, but they all connect. They kind of all interrelate. And, we want students to understand really what it means to be a true friend.
The reason I wrote that first article is because I had a sad experience when I was at another high school of a student in my group that I counseled, and he went out with his buddies over New Year's Eve, and they got intoxicated and took drugs and things like that. And he passed out in the field on New Year's Eve, and his buddies left him, and he froze to death.
Oh my goodness.
Huge difference between a true friend who will risk even getting in trouble to save you, and a buddy who will abandon you in the middle of the field.
Crazy. Yes. Okay. Wow, that one hit the heart. Let's go to number 2. I will include.
All right. How many people feel not included? Many of us feel isolated. Many of us feel like pariahs. Many of us feel like no one cares. Joe came across. Tell the story about the Latino boy that.
Well, and this is incredible. And this was actually before Golden Gate was organized. I had been walking through the halls and noticed a young man sitting in the stairwell day after day. I noticed he was on his phone every day, so I just assumed he was connecting with someone. Well, the more I walked by him day after day, the more I noticed he wasn't looking at anything on his phone, nor was he talking to anybody. So I sat down next to him and I introduced myself. Which is something that's very awkward for kids to do when they see someone sitting alone. They're not willing to reach out. I sat down to him and next to him and found out that he too moved from California, from a Latino community, coming into really a predominantly white and Polynesian school. And so I just started asking him some questions. And when I asked him if he had any friends, he got embarrassed and he turned his head and the tears started to flow. And I said, you know what? I know a group of guys that I know will have Mama Joe's back. So I marched him right down to the vending hall where there was a big group of Polynesian boys, all the football players for Bingham High School that's known for their athletics. And I told those boys that here was a Latino young man who had moved from California. He didn't know anybody. And he just needed some friends that would help him integrate into Bingham and get to know people. And they actually embraced him, brought him in. Every day I would walk by at lunchtime, there was Jonathan with all the Pollies playing cards, having a great time. And how unique that a Latino and a Polynesians came together because they recognized a need in this young man, and it turned everything around for Jonathan.
Wow.
And so, but the kids just needed a reason and a push. And so, and that's what we as adults and administrators need to do, is we need to recruit, help these kids connect, know that they can. But now that the club's in place, we don't have to do that as much, do we, Mike?
Not quite as much. It's still once in a while I'll see a kid like in the lunchroom, and I'll go over to the kids that I know are the real believers in this program, and I'll say, hey, see that kid over there? He could probably use a friend, or she could probably use a friend. And I'll watch these kids get up and go over there, but they do need that little nudge. And I suspect very strongly that adults are not very different.
I agree. We probably need a nudge to include. Let's go to the third one. I will share my knowledge.
So many kids don't have study skills or don't have the knowledge to the scholastic skills. I'm not talking intelligence. I'm talking about the knowledge of how to study properly, things like that,
Right.
Or someone to study with. And so we want Golden Gate members and everybody, frankly, to help other kids, maybe tutor them. The best way to learn a subject is to teach it. And you can't do that on your own. So we have kids to try to get them to pair up and group up and study together and teach each other. And hopefully, we haven't done research on this, but hopefully make a difference in that.
Well, and we also understand that kids join Golden Gate for many reasons. And however they connect, some of these kids are really smart, and that's something that they can offer to Golden Gate. Right. And kids that struggle academically, we can put these kids together and to tutor them, and creates a social connection. And which we've had kids that have come in that we could barely keep at school. I mean, I was constantly taking kids to class when they would show up halfway through the day. And then when these kids come in and are able to connect with tutors and people in the club, they want to be at school. We've had the news media cover multiple times of kids who've told their stories that, I didn't care if I graduated. I didn't care if I came to school. Now they had a reason because they had connected and made a connection. And now they were coming to school, and then we were trying to help them get the skills and help them build those scholastic skills.
Right. Imagine the corporate scenario where you have people working together, synergizing and producing a common product rather than competing with each other and submarining each other. There's an analogy: if you catch a crab at the ocean, put it in a bucket, it'll crawl up. But if you catch two, they'll never get up because one keeps pulling the other one down. And in the corporate world, if you can eliminate that aspect of the competitive culture and get them to synergize and connect and share their knowledge, imagine the productivity you could have.
It does. We actually have studies that show when they get into that synergistic mode, that does increase productivity. And just having studied with the late Judith E. Glaser, we know it's a function of the prefrontal cortex and the heart and the gut. Yeah, so there's a lot of research. In fact, we'll probably have to schedule another talk with us privately, and I'll share some of the neuroscience that's literally backing.
Love that. We would love that.
Yeah, let's go to number 4. I will smile at others, which is at the heart of even the story where you started. So how do you share this? I will smile at others.
That's the as you said, alluded to, that's the foundation of the Golden Gate movement.
Right.
You want to
Yeah.
be the smile that makes a difference. There's more than one story. In fact, I have a young friend who told me, she's 23 years old. She told me recently that she was suicidal 2 years ago. She planned the date, the method, the place, and the time of her suicide. An hour before her intended suicide, she was sitting on a park bench, kind of drinking in the world that she was going to leave behind. And then another girl walked by her and stopped and said, "I know this, I'm sorry, this is awkward, but you were just so beautiful. I just had to tell you that. Your eyes are just stunning." And that's all it took.
Wow.
Well, and you think about a smile is a bridge. The smile is the bridge. When you warmly greet somebody and smile, that is the beginning to pro-social approach. And so, in the video, we have actually the video of the Carly story that morphs into the bridge story of the man that needed a smile. And if you think about it, the smile is the bridge. It is the beginning creations of a connection. And so really we'll be moving that to number 1. Actually, we talked about that on Saturday with our board.
It sounds like a good move. And just for the listeners, we post this, especially when we post this in the WWC magazine, Worldwide Coaching Magazine, we'll make sure that we get that link. Let's go to number 5. I will be aware of students who seem lonely.
There are so many students that we just walk by and don't even notice. There's a movie produced by Brigham Young University years ago called Cipher in the Snow.
Yes.
And and it's a very moving story of someone that wasn't noticed and someone who wasn't included and ended up just perishing. We want to make sure, and when we look around, if we have a habit of looking down at our phone, looking down at our shoes, or looking away from other people, which most people seem to do, then we don't connect. We don't see them. We don't notice. But when we make eye contact, smile, notice people, notice who might be alone, and all they need sometimes is just a hello, or how you doing, or I like your shoes, or just any kind of positive affirmation has been shown in many cases to actually save the life of that kid or that person. Just any connection, and we hunger for that. So Golden Gate members want to give that.
Well, and that's what we train our leaders. So we do have, through the clubs and initiatives, and actually next year, Copper Mountain Middle School will have a teacher advisory class. But what we're doing is we're training students to actually look for those students that are isolating themselves. So they're actively going out and looking to rescue those kids and make sure that they are okay, that they're connected. It's kind of like with the Carly picture. It took Mike and I 7 months to notice something that was right under our nose. Right. And neither he nor I were aware of it, just kind of like the kids who blend in with the tapestry of the schools who go unnoticed, just like Carly did. And so for us, it was really a teaching moment for Mike and I of how easy it is to overlook those kids who really are crying out for help.
Right. Yeah.
So that's what we train our leaders to do.
So businesses could do the same. Coaches could do the same. Who's isolating? Who's lonely?
Right.
Let's go to number.
Yeah.
Who's resentful?
Yeah. It's like be aware. Be aware. Number 6. I will treat others and myself with kindness and respect.
That's an area where many of us, and myself included, kind of fall short, especially the and myself part, because I'm in the habit of pointing out people's positive attributes when I'm in public, and I like to my love language is words of affirmation. I guess look at that book. But when I talk to myself, I'm often very harsh, very critical, and that's not a good thing.
Right.
So we want to develop that culture where we treat others with respect and ourselves with respect, and by doing so, we make ourselves a lot more pleasant to be around, frankly.
Yeah, we do. We actually raise the cybernetic loops around us and other people. I love number 7 because you kind of just make impact. You're not just having a good intention. And number 7 says, I will resolve conflicts appropriately.
That's my job revolves around that as a high school administrator.
Right.
We do what we call conflict resolutions. And we get kids who are bound and determined to fight each other or to harm each other in some way or to cyberbully. And when we sit down and we talk it out and we come to a common agreement, the success rate is well into the 90th percentile, because all it takes in many cases is communication. That's why I cannot stand to watch sitcoms, because all they got to do is say what the truth is at the beginning and the show's over. And so, but that's often, it boils down to someone believing a false rumor, somebody misinterpreting, and when they've handled it appropriately rather than with their fists, you can imagine it's
well, and 2, it could be a gap in communication too. It could be a gap in those soft skills and those communication skills, and those are the type of things we're trying to get into the elementary schools. We're not trying, we actually have 4 elementary schools coming on board in the fall, but we just feel like it's imperative. I mean, kids aren't learning those basic fundamental skills in the homes anymore, and you turn on the TV, it's nothing but violence, and you look at our world, it's nothing but hate ridden. And you know, we want, when kids put on the Stay Kind shirt, and the Golden Gate kids put on those Stay Kind, feel like superheroes, that they're empowered to be kind and to be able to this also holds them accountable, you know. Right. When they put on something like this, it kind of, and we feel like the shirt is every bit as important as the skills that we're teaching, because it's an empowering part of our movement. I spoke with the elementary principal last week about bringing this program in, and you know, all the clubs and initiatives, we have a day that we wear these shirts, and how great would it be if it was parents and business members, and we all wore our Stay Kind shirts on one day of the week, because what that does is it sends a message that we will be genuine, we'll be approachable, that we will resolve, that we will do everything in the pledge. And that's why it's so important for us to instill the pledge articles into these kids so that they understand them, they know them, and it empowers them to become that person.
Imagine a world in which corporate cultures and, frankly, political practices resolve conflicts appropriately. Maybe defense contractors should go out of business.
That would be great if we could, if the Golden Gate Club could be partially responsible for that. I'm going to move to number 8. This one seems like there's a lot of self-efficacy that you're building in this. I will be responsible, is what number 8 says. I will be responsible for my own happiness.
The world, many of us look at the world as owing us happiness. I've known many people, and sometimes even myself, when I just think, you know, I'm feeling sorry for myself, or they're feeling sorry for themselves. And really, I've developed a habit now when kids will say, "Hey, Mr. Hughes, have a nice day." My answer is, "I intend to." And that communicates to them and to myself that I'm responsible for my own happiness. I can't control always what the world does to me, but I can control my attitude toward it. And I can choose to be happy or not to be happy. And why would I ever choose not to be happy?
So well said. So well said. Let's go to 9. I will be my best self.
Go for it, Joe.
Well, you know, that is kind of a challenge to yourself. You know, it's not like you're having to compete with the person next door. It is a challenge to yourself to be your best self emotionally, that you'll do whatever it takes to be emotionally, spiritually, physically in tune with what you need. And I think it's important that we teach our kids not to compare themselves with other people or to compete with themselves, that they are perfect just how they are.
Mhm.
And, one of our goals in teaching kids is to help them recognize their potential and what they can become, and that who they are is perfect, that they don't have to prove anything to anybody, and that they can be happy with who they are, and they don't have to change just because someone else thinks they should change. These are things that really need to be taught. And so, yeah, and that's one thing that I think that has helped me in understanding and building this movement and building this organization, that, you know what, I am proud of who I am, and two, I accept myself, and I'm happy, and I'm doing my best, and that's good enough.
Wow, that's really, really well said. Okay, the last one. I will strive to make someone's day every day.
That's you, Mike.
You just hit on my favorite one. I'm an extremely selfish person. I'm going to tell you that right now. I love to feel wonderful. And there is no better way to feel great than to make someone's day, because they turn around and treat you amazingly, and you feel energized as well. I have a little thing that I tell kids at school. I've gotten up in assemblies, and I have Parkinson's disease. I tell kids that I can either just focus on my Parkinson's disease and what a devastating illness it is, and how terrible, blah, 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 and my future, and what's it hold for me, all that. In which case I'm miserable, because that's all it dominates my field of vision. Or I can move it aside, and I can focus on you, and I can help you. The Parkinson's is still there, but it's not the center of my focus. And I actually had a young lady, beautiful young lady, who anyone would think has the world going for her. And I work in the middle school, and she came into my office this last couple of months ago. She said, I was suicidal a couple of months ago. I was suicidal this fall. I was intending to take my life. I said, and you're not now? She said, no. I said, what changed it? She said, you. I said, who? Me? What'd I do? And she said,
well, and I have so many kids coming up to me saying, Mama Jo, why am I so happy? Or I've heard words like, I'm on happiness overload, or whatever. We see the kids coming in, participating in Golden Gate. They're happy, and I tell them it's because, teenagers are self-centered. They tend to focus on themselves, but when they look outward to see who they can elevate, that is where they truly become happy. And so it's so important to us as a movement that we're helping our students learn how to reach out and serve others.
Yeah.
And in fact, kind of our move this week, yesterday was National Random Acts of Kindness Day, and we're asking all the participants this week to do 3 random acts of kindness, and all the things that just doing kind acts does. We posted on our social media, and the increases serotonin. It makes you, there are so many things to your health.
Right.
Just doing a random act of kindness. And I actually had a meeting last week, or actually it was a couple weeks ago, with the student resource officers, law enforcement officers in Harriman. And they're looking to bring in Golden Gate resources as a pro-social unit to teach in their law enforcement classes. And they were talking about a research that took place in Australia. It was a 12-year research, and they took the students in this private school and gave half of them random acts of kindness to do every day for 12 years. And the other half, they did not. And after 12 years of following these kids, the ones that they had given this challenge to do, to participate in this research, those students were thriving. They were doing so well in their life. And I thought, how interesting when, but we have to challenge our kids to reach out and to do those things. And it's almost sad that we have to organize it.
On my wall,
but that's what we're...
On the wall of my office, there's a poster that I made. It's called The Principle of the Pointed Finger, and where you can point your finger at somebody, but you got 3 pointing back at you. But at the bottom of that poster says, what you give the world comes back to you many times over. So you give the world love, you get love in abundance. You give the world hate, you get hate in abundance. It tells us that we're in control. So if I want friendship, I've got to give friendship. If I want love, I've got to give love. If I want kindness, I've got to give kindness. If I give anything else other than those things, I'm going to receive exactly what I give. So what I put in, I get out. And that last pledge article puts us again in control. If I make your day, I feel amazing. And that's just the way it works. And it's counterintuitive, but it's really true.
It is really true. Well, you guys have given us a brilliant list. This list people can find on your website. So let's talk about, if people want to circle back and learn more about your Golden Gate efforts, where do they go?
Joe?
So they can go to goldengatemovement.org.
Okay.
We actually have materials that are free under Get Involved on the website.
Nice.
They can scroll down to our presentation. We have a PowerPoint there that talks about the story and what we're trying to accomplish in schools. And then there are videos. There's actually a video that shows students participating and how it's growing. There's the Carly story and the story at the bridge. And then the student who actually inspired us to start this movement, her story's on there as well. And then if they want to bring it into their corporations, their communities, their schools, they can reach out and contact us. We've got little program packages that are very affordable. Our goal in the future is, even in the corporate world, which right now we're just trying to develop the materials for high schools and elementaries, but we see the high school and elementary materials as being universal, really, right, because it really applies to all of us. And once those materials are developed, we would love people to, and as our program is going in, I would say virtually almost at our movement's cost, because so many of these educators, it's about the kids. Right. It's not about the bottom line.
Well, the bottom line is that Joe and I both have spent thousands of dollars for which we haven't seen a cent. And because it's, at this point, it's for the kids. Right. And when 14 kids tell me that they're alive today because of this movement, and even if only one of them meant it, it's worth every
well,
penny.
And tell her about the suspensions.
You don't you don't put a dollar sign on a life.
You don't put a dollar sign on a life, and we are a nonprofit. We need donations though to help us continue to develop our materials, but we want to be able to have these materials available for people who need it, because this is about helping others for us. And
one statistic that I thought was interesting is I went from Bingham High School to a middle school. The middle school the year before I got there, and this isn't about me, it's about the program we instituted. The year before we got there and instituted this program, they had 87 suspensions. The year we instituted the program, they had 11.
Wow. Yes, I can tell that your work has an impact, and I'm hoping through this interview that you get more circulation, that we have coaches and we have corporations reaching out to you. So again, Michael Hughes, an administrator, a man who cares about children, as you can see, a man who is focusing more on the youth of our future than even his own health. And we have Mama Jo, who's spreading her wings as a wonderful wife and mother, who's becoming the mother to thousands. I applaud you guys and just thank you so much for the time that you guys have spent here.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
And we look forward to talking to you in the future.
Absolutely.
Good, very good. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye. I hope you've enjoyed that interview, and I would very much encourage you to go out and find the 10 points of the pledge that we just covered with Michael and Mama Jo. In addition to that, I'd like to read a few things that I found on their website. They are a pro-social, inclusive, hands-on organization. What do we mean by that? Pro-social means that they do not aim to prevent or deter, but rather to accept and include. Think about how that might transfer into your culture. They're inclusive. What does that mean? They do not limit in their clubs. They only include. It's not like there's a certain number or a certain type of person. If you're interested, you are involved. How can we use that in our homes, our organizations, and our companies? And finally, hands-on. They are a hands-on organization, which means they go well beyond a pledge and a t-shirt. They're out there. They have board members. They have parents. They have created organizations like clubs. They are hands-on. They don't just talk to people. They do things. They don't just tell. They show. This is another question that I want to pose to you. How can the hands-on approach be applied to your organization? Again, we can make this world a better place by being more pro-social, to be more insulation oriented around letting people feel safe and inclusive. I hope that you found something you can use. Go out and apply one of the 10 pledges or one of these last 3 items I've mentioned. Make the world a better place.